Hey, everybody, and welcome to GHTR. And tonight I got John Tunnell on with me here. And how I come across this guy was on TikTok, and he was coming at me with this message about using the Lord's name in vain. Got my attention. So how about everybody say hi to John? Hey, John, how you
How are
doing,
you doing?
bud?
Oh, sorry, that's
Pretty
right.
good. No,
Oh,
that's
hey
okay.
there. Oh, hey there.
All right. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you're at?
So myself now is, I'm build houses and I flip houses. I
Mhm.
make music and play a lot of music. I play guitar, piano, and sing. I have 3 albums. My band name is Angels Unaware. I have 6 books published on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. I have a TV show called John Works Too Much, and I do a lot of acting. And I have a TV studio and a recording studio,
Wow, you get busy, don't you?
and I make T-shirts.
Oh, do you? Do you?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
gonna have to let me see what you got. Get us some. So
yeah. Right.
so from what I understand, you have quite the testimonial how you got to where you're at right now in
Yeah.
your belief of God. How did
Mhm.
that all happen?
So when I was born, my name was Sun Elk Shepherd Surefoot. Sun like in the sky, elk like a big deer, shepherd that would watch your sheep, and Surefoot like you will not fall. My parents were hippies. I was conceived in India. I almost died before I was born. My mom and I almost died. But then my grandfather was a foreign ambassador and he pulled strings and got us out. Then I was born out in the woods in Seattle, Washington, and we moved around Washington quite a bit. We moved around to Colorado, to California, Hawaii, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida, and then I started kindergarten.
Hmm.
Uh, sorry, I got hair on my mouth. There it is. Um, so I grew up on hippie communes. The first time I got high, I was 3 years old. First time I had sex, I was 3 years old. I was around drugs from before I was born. Um, and that just was kind of normal in my life. Um, at some point, my mom got clean and got away from everything. I didn't meet my dad till I was 27. Um, and then in eighth, so then my mom married another guy who was a Marine and had studied to be a Catholic priest. And he was, we had a difficult relationship. Um,
Okay.
and, you know, to be honest with you, like I was told I was the man of the house when I was 3. And so I was like, I'm the man of the house. And then he came along and I was 9. And I'm like, but I'm the man of the house. I don't know who you are. And he's like, wrong again. And so there was a lot of friction.
Wow.
Um,
Now you said right around 3 you had what? Did you say you got high when you were 3?
I did, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
which is more
You
common.
remember that?
I
You
do.
remember
I remember somebody passing a joint and I took a hit. I remember that.
3 years old?
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Sadly,
crazy.
the world is saturated in it, and that's a lot more common than you would think. There's a lot of people getting their kids high.
Well, back in that day, I can understand. I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
I don't know
I
how old you are, but I'm pushing 58, so I remember those days
yeah,
when everybody was happy. So
yeah, yeah. I'm
so
49, but I'll be 50 like next Wednesday.
oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. So then he was kind of abusive, and I was the new kid a lot. So I went to 22 schools in 22 states and moved around a lot, and I was always the new kid, and so I got picked on a lot, and then I got in a lot of fights. And at first, I just kind of took it, and I would tell a teacher or tell my mom or whatever. And he said, if you don't bloody their faces, if you don't do damage to them and humiliate them in front of everybody, if you don't leave scars and marks on them, then when you get home, I'll do that to you. And I was like,
Well,
well, I'd rather fight a kid my age that's bigger than me than fight a Marine who's a full grown man. So I got in a lot of fights because if I didn't, then I was going to get beat up when I got home. And so I got in a lot of trouble in school, and I started hanging out with all the wrong people. I think in ninth grade, I I had my own classroom. Like they kept putting me in on-campus suspension, but I didn't care anymore. They gave it to me for the rest of the year, and I didn't care anymore because I'm like, well, what are you going to do to me now? Put me in suspension next year too? Like I care. And so they were like, you can't even be in general population for the people that are in trouble because you're too much trouble for them. So we're going to give you your own room. And so I had my own room for an entire semester in ninth grade.
Really? You didn't have anybody in there with you, or?
Nope, just me in that room. They would come to give me a bathroom break and then a lunch break by myself, and then another bathroom break, and then the day was over.
So
And the
they
rest,
lock you up, is what you're saying.
yeah, pretty much, yeah,
Oh,
pretty
jeez.
much.
Sounds
So,
like a school back then. Yeah, right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So they gave me SWATs for a long time, and then that wasn't good enough, and they were like, you're unmanageable. You're just, you don't listen, you don't care. And I'm like, I'm not gonna, you can't tell me what to do, and I'm not gonna do it. So there.
Mm.
And I was pretty difficult. I did a lot of drugs, and yeah, I was selling drugs. I was a runaway. Well, so when I was 14, I ran away, and then when I was 15, I left home for good. Um, but I was stealing stuff every night. I was breaking into houses. I was breaking into cars. I was robbing people. I did every kind of drug you can imagine. I was potty mouth. I was sleeping around. Like I was not a good person. I was taking a lot of acid, doing a lot of meth, smoking a lot of weed. I was sucking freon out of air conditioner units. And the acid that I was taking had strychnine in it, and strychnine is rat poison. And that was kind of popular back in the day. I don't know what it is now, but it was. And so they told me if you take more than 2 hits, then you're probably going to die.
Mm.
And I was taking 4 or 5 hits several times a week, 4 or 5 hits at a time, several times a week. And I did, I don't know, 300 hits within less than a year. And so my brain was mush. But one night, I went to a concert, and I orange juice concentrate all day long because it has citric acid, and so that enhanced the high. And then took 5 hits acid. I went to the concert, and I was laughing, and my life was just like, I'm going to get high till I die. I don't care. I don't care about you or anybody else. I'm going to do whatever in the world I want to. I'm going to live the rest of my life on the run from the law, and I'm not afraid of you guys. By this point, I'd already been robbed at knife point and at gunpoint several times. I've been through some pretty serious things. I just didn't care. I was like, I'm not afraid.
So what do you think was the real cause of that? I mean, was it because of your parents, or?
So my stepdad told me that if I ever did drugs, that I could never get a job, that I could never, that they would do lie detector tests and they would know that I'd done drugs, that he would disown me, that I wouldn't have a family, I wouldn't have a job that was real. And I just, in my mind, as soon as I smoked weed in the 8th grade, then I was like, then it's over, right? Then I'm just going to make the best of it. And I never will have a real job, and I never really will have a family, and I'll never have any of the things that other people have. And so I just figured, well, then I don't care about it.
Kind of threw in the towel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm going to make the best. I'm going to make the best out of what I got. And that's that.
Were you in any relationships during this time?
When I was 15, yeah. Well, let me think. So I did go to rehab for 7 weeks, and I was in a relationship with a girl for a couple months. And then after that, when I was a runaway for good, then I was living with another girl. And we got evicted from 7 apartment complexes within like 6 months because of the amount of drug traffic that was coming and going. It was crazy, like how much drug traffic there was. And there's people shooting up and smoking crack and everything in the world at our place. We had stolen stuff everywhere. It was a mess. But I go to this concert and I fall back in my chair and I can't move for quite a while. I was like, something's not right. And so I muster the strength to pull myself forward. And then I'm like, something doesn't feel right. And I turn back around and I'm still sitting in the chair. Like, like my body's back there. I'm like, that's not good. Yeah, pretty sure that should set off alarm bells in your mind. So
you were on some good stuff then, right?
Yeah, or bad stuff, whichever, but it was stuff. So I put my hands on my face, and when I did, my eye jumps out of my head and starts twitching around in my hand. And I was like, that can't be right. And if I'm tripping, then I don't want to really rip my eyes out of my head. So I shoved my eye back in, and I was like, oh no. And my ears shriveled up inside my head. I'm like, nope. And so I reach in the back of my skull, and there's like a flap back there. I reach into my brain. I'm like, nope, I got to stop this right now. I'm going to really hurt myself. um, and then I look like, man, is anybody else seeing this? And I look at my friend next to me, and he's gone. And there's a demon like in my face. And then I look around, and I'm not at a concert anymore. And there's demons everywhere. And I realize, like, oh wow, I'm in hell. And then, they say your life flashes before your eyes whenever you die, but uh, it was like I just zoomed out and looked down and went, that's my whole life, like a big picture of it. And I'm like, there's nothing good there. There's
Hmm.
nothing good there at all. I'm not a good person. I've done every bad thing. And I was like, but I can't be dead. I'm only 16 years old. And I was like, I can't be in hell because I don't believe in hell. But, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you believe if you're wrong, right?
Right.
So uh, then I'm like, I realized that there's no way out of this. And regardless of whether or not I wanted to believe it, it was true. And I was like, I will never smile again. I will never have a friend again. I will never have peace or rest again. In 100 years, I'll still be here. In 1,000 years, I'll still be here. In 1,000,000 years, I'll still be here. And I was like, I will do anything to get out of here. Uh, if it takes me 1,000 years of crawling through raw sewage to get out of this, I will do that to get out of here because it's that bad. And I realized I deserve this. And so um, I was quickly like, I've got seconds or maybe minutes to get this right, or else I'm done forever. And I need to figure this out. And I was like, there's got to be a loophole. There's got to be something. There's got to be some way for me to get out of this. I'm like, there's nothing. I racked my brain. I'm like, there's nothing I can do to make this right, unless there really is a God and he really will have mercy on me. And immediately I just said, God, I don't know if I believe in you. I don't deserve anything from you. I don't know if you're real. I'm a rotten person, but if you'll save me from this, I will do anything for you. Literally anything. You want heavy water from the bottom of the ocean? I'll do it. You want magma from the bottom of the volcano? I'll find a way. You want moon rocks from the moon? I will go. You tell me what to do and I will do it. Please
Hmm.
get me out of here. Please. And within probably less than a minute of me praying that, I was either alive again or I had sobered up. But either way, it was a miracle, right? And so I was um, I was very grateful. And I looked at my friends because everything kind of gelled back into reality. I was like, ooh, we need to get out of here right now. And I told them I died and went to hell tonight. And they're like, you had a bad trip. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm
Yeah,
like,
they're not, like they're gonna believe you, right?
right, right. And I was like, no, man, this is real. And they're like, no, you just need to get back on the horse. You need to get back up, do some more acid. You'll be fine. Because we were acid heads. Uh, and so I kept fighting them. And then finally I was like, I'll do one hit. And I did. And as soon as I started peeking, I was like, this was a mistake. Um, and I looked at them. I was like, I'm going to go to my room. Don't knock on the door. Don't come in, no matter what you hear, no matter what. Like, treat me like I'm a werewolf. And I got to lock myself in here tonight, or else I'm going to do damage. And so I went in there, and it was the same thing again. It was hell and torture and torment and demons and all kinds of bad things. Um, and as this is happening, I thought, I'll pray, because the last time I prayed and that fixed it. Um, but then it was like God came to me face to face, and he was beautiful. And he just said, no, I need to teach you a lesson. And then he flew away. And it was like a comet tail of, I don't know, rainbow sparkles coming off of him or something.
Mhm.
You're tripping and everything's weird. Um, and then as it faded, I was like, please, no, I'm so sorry. Please, no, 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 to come back. And he wouldn't. And as it faded, I looked and it was just like I was in raw sewage, like just, ugh, like my life was just yuck. Um, and so I had to ride the night out. It was tough, and eventually, I came down and sobered up, and I was like, and I never did acid again. But I kept on doing meth, and I kept on, I smoked crack, and I did coke, every bad thing you could do, um, for a while. But then I noticed that I had flashbacks every day, and I had nightmares every night where I felt like I was fighting demons, running from demons, going to
Mhm.
hell, all these things. And I was like, this is torture. But then I noticed, well, first I was like, I should not do hard drugs, because like I'll be like California sober. Like I still smoke weed and drink, but like that's not bad
Is that
because
what that's called?
yeah, that's
California?
not,
Oh, I
yeah.
didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and come to think about it, my brother and my two older brothers are from California, my stepbrothers,
Right.
and he never did anything hard. It was always smoking dope
Yeah.
and drinking, So yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So because like if you're already a drug addict, like, well, that's not that bad though. That's just like,
Mhm.
breathing. And you're like, but it is bad though.
No matter how you
Uh,
look at it. Right, right.
yeah.
It's like I
You're,
stopped drinking when I was like 26
yeah.
and kept smoking pot for quite a while
Right.
until I think God slapped me. So
Yeah.
uh,
So then I'm trying to fast forward here. Basically, I started noticing that when I got high at all, that the flashbacks were worse. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I felt like my eyes were bleeding. I just felt like I was in constant torment and I was in
mhm.
hell. And I was like, I'm doing this to myself. I'm an idiot. Right. So I figured I'm gonna try to back off. And um, so I did. And then while that had really quickly after that, I was dealing drugs with somebody and we went to his parents' house and he fell asleep immediately. And it was midnight on a Friday night. And then I wasn't tired because I was like, I was used to staying up all night, but also I was used to being high all the time. And now my body was just like, you don't have all this stuff to work out, so you're not exhausted. And so I wasn't tired. So I walked into the living room and his little brother was a Christian and he was watching the prayer channel at midnight on a Friday night.
Mm.
And I'd made fun of him a lot for being a Christian, but he, it's his house. And I was like, what else am I going to do? So I sat down and started watching TV with him. And the preacher on the TV screen might as well have been just reading my diary. He said, you're doing all these things. I'm like, I am. And if you don't change, then this is what's going to happen to you. I'm like, I could see that. And basically, it's like, so if anybody wants to pray, then now's the time to pray. And I was thinking, I want to pray so bad. I want to get this right. And then his little brother just goes click and turns the TV off. I'm like, but as I looked at him, I had tears in my eyes. And like I was a tough guy. And I'd made fun of him a lot. And I thought, okay, well, I'm vulnerable. So now he's going to make fun of me. And I need to take the hit because I've been pretty mean. But instead of that, he had compassion on me and he was kind to me. And he sat there and listened. And he said, so you're dealing with all this stuff. You've been to hell and whatever. And I told him in graphic detail all the things I saw. And he was like, well, that sounds horrible. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. And then he said, what do you think heaven's like? I was like, I don't know. He said, just tell me what you think. Like maybe like clouds and angels with harps. It's really empty and really boring. Like none of my friends are there. You can't do anything fun. I definitely won't be there. I don't know.
Mhm.
And he goes, do you mind if I read out of the Bible what the Bible says heaven's like? And I'm like, yeah, knock yourself out. So he reads where it says, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, nor has it even entered into the mind of man what God has in store for those that love him. And he says, have you seen and heard some cool things? I'm like, yes. And he goes, it doesn't compare. And can you imagine some cool things? I'm like, my imagination's off the charts. He goes, you can't even imagining how amazing heaven is. And I'm like,
Right.
okay.
Right.
And then he read out of Revelation 21 and 22 about, new heaven and a new earth, and the New Jerusalem, and the walls are 200 foot thick with just nothing but jewels, 1,500 miles high, wide, and deep. And, all the streets of gold so pure, this like transparent glass. But what got me was that God would be there, and we would see him, and, he would be our God, and we'd see him face to face, that there'd be no more pain, no more suffering, no more death, no more sorrow, no more tears, because the old order of things had passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, if I lived in a dumpster and didn't have those things, I could live there forever and be happy. Right. But then you're telling me all these jewels and all this stuff. I was like, you know what, though? If I'm thinking this through, my very presence in this place would ruin it. Real quick, you'd be like, this is polluted because of that clown over there. And everybody looking, I'll be like, he's talking about me. I'm the clown. I'm the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the first time in my life, I wanted to go to heaven. And immediately I realized I will never be there. And I cried. And I said, I can't imagine what I could possibly do to make up for all the bad things I've done. Like, if I sit here and think about it, and I know the weight of the sin on my heart, and if I think, what good things could I do to balance that scale the other direction? And the truth is, I couldn't even think of what good things were. Like, in my mind, there was nothing there. I was just like, I guess I could help old ladies across the street, but like, how many old ladies would I have to help across the street to make up for all the stuff I've done? Like 28 million? You know what I'm saying? Like, it'd be a lot.
Right.
I don't think I could do it in a lifetime. I don't think that first of all, I don't know what is good. And secondly, I don't think realistically that I could balance the scales ever, even just to make it neutral, even just to be like, I don't know, like your karma's at zero or whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. And immediately I just cried, because I was like, I'll never be there. I'm hopeless. I can never do anything to make up for all the wrong I've done.
So those thoughts that you were going, in your head, you were thinking, hey, no, I'm not worthy. I'm not, I'm not going to make it there. Like,
right.
You say I am,
Yeah.
And it takes a lot. It must have took a lot out of you at that time.
It did. It was, it was hard because nobody had to tell me I was bad. Like, I knew I was bad. I had chosen to be bad. And I didn't go halfway into it. I went like, that I'm a bad guy, then I'm going to be a bad guy. And I knew the gravity of that. I knew the weight and the punishment that went with that. And I didn't want to go to heaven before that. Like, I didn't think that there was anything good about it. And then whenever I heard that, then I was like, well, I do want to go there. But then immediately I was like, but I can't. And my friend's little brother said, you're right. You can never make up for all the wrong you've done. I was like, thanks.
Oh, wow. Thanks for that kick in the...
Yeah, right. Yeah. Thanks, buddy. You're not really making it better right now. But he immediately followed that up with, but Jesus loves you so much that he died and took the punishment for your sins. And he loves you so much that if you were the only person on earth, he would have done that for you. And, since then I've heard that a lot. And I've heard a lot of people just say it flippantly and treat it like it's nothing. But I definitely felt the gravity of that. And I still to this day feel the gravity of that like, and I said out loud, why would he do that for me? Why would anybody do that for me? Like, don't you know what I am? I'm not worth it. I'm garbage. I'm trash. So why would the Son of God come down and be one of us and then take on my punishment? I don't understand.
Didn't make sense, is what you're saying. Yeah.
No.
I know that feeling.
The problem is that we've heard it so much that it's just like, oh yeah, we know that. But when you think about it, you're like, but if you were the Son of God, would you do that for us? I mean, when you look at us, like, really, do you think, man, I love you so much, I want to come and die for you? I mean, I was I was in awe. You know, I was
Hmm.
very humbled and also just almost in disbelief, like, but why? And he goes, well, either way, the offer still stands. The price has been paid for you, and you can accept that free gift or not. And I was like, what idiot says no to that? Who hears that offer and goes, nah, man, I'm gonna stick with what I got? You know what I'm saying? Like, no, I think I'm going to keep on going down the road I'm going down. You're like, well, you've been down that road. How did that do? I'm like, not good. It hasn't been good. Every day is torture for me. Every day
Right.
is torment. So no, I don't want to keep going down the road. I would do literally anything right now. You could be like, I need you to build an aircraft carrier out of toothpicks. I'd be like, I'll find a way if this gets me out of here. Um, and so he said, well, then we need to pray. And I'm like, I'd love to, but I don't know how. And he said, just repeat after me. And I'm like, I can do that. So he said, God, I'm a sinner. And I'm like, I am. And I was like, you don't understand. Like, I really, really am. I'm so sorry. And he's like, and I'm asking you to forgive me my sins. I'm like, please, I've done so many bad things. Please forgive me. And I believe that you died for me. And I'm like, I do. I believe it. Like, I heard it. I believe it. It's a historical fact. Like, I know it in my heart. And, you know, I'm so sorry. I said a lot more. I mean, at the time,
Hmm.
I'm tired right now, but that day, I got saved. And then shortly after, somebody invited me to church. And I'm like, look, I know I'm talking about Jesus and stuff, but I don't think I can go to a church. I mean, look at me. I'm a mess. And they were like, well, they've got free barbecue. And I was like, I'm pretty starving. So, I mean, I was homeless. I was a runaway and I was a homeless drug dealer. And so I didn't have very much food. And so I went. But when I got there, I had long hair. I was 45 minutes late. I was wearing an Iron Maiden t-shirt. I was emaciated from drugs. I was barefoot. And he goes, let's go inside. I'm like, look at me. And he goes, come on, let's go inside. You said you were going to come. And I was like, okay, fine. And I thought, I'm going to sneak in the back. I'm going to sit in the very back row, sit here for 5 or 10 minutes, whatever, because I'm already late, and go have some barbecue. And I creak open the door, and it's a very small church. And they all turn around and look at me, and there's no hiding me. I was like, here it comes. Here comes that hatred. Here comes the judgment. And here comes lightning. It's about to hit me. And I deserve it.
About to burst into flames, right?
Yep. I really thought, I was like, if something this unholy comes in contact with something that holy, it's not going to end well for me.
Hmm.
I could not have been more wrong. I walk in, everybody turns around, they all look at me, and there's no hiding me. And you could immediately, like, that kid's a drug addict, right? Like, he's a mess. And instead of them having any judgment whatsoever, they smiled. And the pastor says, come on in. Let me tell you what we're talking about. And I'm like, all right. All right, I'll come on in then. And he goes, there's a seat right here in the front. And I'm like, okay. And so I went up to the front and I sat down, and he briefed me on his entire sermon. And it was basically the same thing that TV evangelist was saying. You're doing all these bad things. If you don't change, then this is what's going to happen to you. If you want to get saved, then this is the way to do it. If anybody wants to pray, then come up here. And I wanted to go up so bad, but I was making excuses because, late, 45, all the things.
Hmm.
And the guy next to me was like, get up there, man. He's talking about you. And so I stood up, took 2 steps forward, and he said, what can I do for you, young man? And I'm like, well, I think I want to get baptized. He says, and why is that? I'm like, because I'm a sinner. And I cried. And we prayed. And he turned me around. And he said, all the angels in heaven rejoice when even one sinner comes to repentance. And I can hear them shouting for joy for this young man right now. I want you all to come up here and welcome him into the family of God. And then they did. Everybody in that church came up and they hugged my neck and they shook my hand and they gave me encouraging words and scriptures. and we had barbecue together. And the next week I got baptized, and I left the state and got clean.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
never touched drugs again.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you ever go back home to your parents, or did you ever?
I went to my mom's she had gotten divorced already. I went to my mom's in North Carolina and got sober, and I read the whole Bible. And I honestly thought that the rapture was going to happen like any minute. I was like, I'll just hang out here for a couple minutes, and then God's going to come back for me, which longer than I thought. But
And how old were you at that time? By that time,
16. I was 16.
16. Got saved when you were 16. Wow.
And I read the whole Bible, and then I was sitting there and I was like, I can't just sit around here doing nothing. I feel like I need to do something. And so I went to Jesus People USA in Chicago, Illinois, and I fed homeless people there for several months. And then I ended up getting sick, and my mom's like, we should go and start our own thing up in Washington State. And so I came back and worked, saved some money, and we, when I was 17, bought 20 acres of land in Washington and built a log cabin. That was the first house I built. And I built a lot since. I don't know how many, but
it sounds like you had a real tough time during your teenager years, and
I did.
But you still, by this time, you still didn't have a relationship with anybody other than girls.
No, then I was single for 4 years after that, and then I met my first wife when I was 19, and we were together for a decade and had 2 kids together, and she ended up cheating on me and leaving me. So that was unpleasant.
Really. I hate to hear that, but the thing about it is hearing your childhood kind of like rings a bell to me. It's about the same thing. But I had my parents. My dad, he was in Marine Corps. He was, and then he transitioned into the Air Force. He trained dogs for the Air Force, and I grew up with my mom. I stayed with my mom. My dad and my stepmother were alcoholics, and I kind of did my own thing. I think the first time I got high was like when I was like 14 is when I did that. I was raised in a Christian, my grandma, she was a devout Christian, church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday, religiously. So I kind of feel where you're coming from, but I wasn't that hardcore. And I think I kind of didn't want to, because I seen my friends, who were doing all that. And
they're like some mess.
Yeah. And I'm like, looking at them. And then, of course, my first marriage failed. And then I had got married a second time, and we were not even married 3 days, and she died. And
really?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I you have this roller coaster, and it sounds like to me like it's possible you had the same roller coaster ride.
Oh yeah.
So even after you found God. So what happened after that? I mean, what did your life look like after that?
So then I was in Washington. I was in Illinois for a bit, went to North Carolina. Then I went to Washington, built the log cabin. I ended up doing a bunch of construction. I worked in a gold mine as a geologist assistant. I worked in a sawmill. I learned how to drive heavy equipment. And then my mom says, the only time you're happy is when you're preaching. You ought to go study to be a pastor. I was like, I'm a dropout, Mom. Like I dropped out in 10th grade. She goes, you're pretty smart. And so I went and took the GED, and it was a joke. They basically put a mirror under your nose, and if you fog it, then you pass. Right? Like,
so did your mom get saved at all?
My mom was a Buddhist.
Okay.
And so no, it's all right. And then my dad, like I said, I didn't meet him until I was 27, and he's been a hippie, and he's been pretty crazy. Then I saw him a handful of times. I didn't see him for a decade. And then he popped up about a year and a half ago, and he's got skin cancer, like horrifically bad. Like he lost both his eyes, and then all this is just one big scab. Like it's a thick scab. He's lost half his nose. Both of his eyes are completely gone. He's got something that big on his ankle that's just eating away at him. And he's in hospice and has been for about since December before last. So
Wow.
he's actually, I visit him quite often. He's in Fort Worth right now, so I visit him. Yeah, but he's definitely, he's got some crazy ideas. Neither one of my parents were. There was a time that my mom was, at the time I got saved, she was in some kind of Bible study and they were praying for me, and so I was very grateful for that. Since then, she decided that she doesn't want to be a Christian. She was more Catholic than anything, and I think, you know, like there's a lot of the priest raping kids and things like that that turned her off to all that. And so on one hand I can understand, and on the other hand it breaks my heart, you know.
I bet.
Yeah.
So you built that log cabin, and then
Right. Oh, sorry. Then did some other things. And I went to college in Idaho, at Northwest Nazarene College, and then I couldn't afford it after a year because I was poor. And so I went back to work at the sawmill, and then my brother said, you should come down to North Carolina and be in my band. And so I did. And then we were there for a little bit, and our roommate was very weird and started doing really weird things. And we decided we could go anywhere in the world because we had money in a car. And when I say money, I mean, I had $700 and he had about $200, and we felt like we were rich. So, you know, now it's laughable, but at the time I was like, man, we can go literally anywhere in the world with this. And
that's
so
like a tank of gas these days.
I know, right? So we drove to Texas, and I found a church immediately, and I found, you know, a job. I was a roofer. And then I became a youth pastor, and I was still studying to be a pastor, but it was all like home study stuff. And I was a roofer for a bit, and then I got laid off, and I accidentally started my own company. And that was when I was 21, I think. And so it started off, and it was, you know, I thought, I'll do this, and then after this I'll get a real job, and then I'll do this, and then after that I'll get a real job. And years passed, and I had 8 people working for me, and I was like, oh, this is my real job. I'm self-employed. But I never knew anybody that owned a business. I didn't understand what it meant. I just knew that people kept asking
me. You got it. You accidentally started your own business.
So here's what happened.
Okay.
I got laid
off. I'm
off.
ready for this one.
Yeah, I got laid off at my job as a roofer. I was making $8.50 an hour. We did all the roofs in the Metroplex. There was nothing left to do because everybody got a new roof because there was softball size hail. And so a couple of years passed, and we burned through all the roofs. And then they just came to us one day with that warning and said, you're done. Sorry, we're out of work. And I was like, God, where in the world am I going to get a job that I can make $8.50 an hour, have long hair, and work around my youth pastor schedule? It's like, please help me. And I also did concerts back then. And I've been playing music forever.
Okay, that was one of the questions I did have, is because you never brought that music, you know, in there. How'd that happen?
I started playing guitar when I was 12. When I got saved, I had a bunch of guitars, and then I gave everything I had away. When I got saved, I literally, like, all my CDs, all my concert T-shirts. You know, I'd met Iron Maiden, like everything that I had. I was like, this led me to hell. I'm done. I'm not going to sell it. I'm just going to throw it away. And I filled a dumpster with all of it. And then I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to serve people. And if God says to give everything away and go serve the poor, I'm going to go do that. And I did. I gave away everything I had, including my guitars. And I was like, I guess if I'm going to play guitar, I can play in heaven. And it was hard. It was hard to let go of that because I love playing music.
Yeah, it's hard to get. It was hard for me. At one time, unfortunately, I didn't give it away. My daughter's mom decided to sell it all. So I was a family man now. You don't need that stuff. And I was like, oh.
But I love it though.
I know. I just said, it's the only thing I got. Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Just nope, you don't need it no more. I mean, she sold everything.
Yeah, that's tough.
So
anyway, so then my mom got me an acoustic guitar like the next year. and was like, oh, maybe you can play some music. And I'm like, if I'm going to have this, then I'm only devoting it to God. And so I did. And then after that, I started writing a lot of songs, like hundreds of songs. And, like when you're a kid, you're less experienced. And
Mm-hmm.
the more time that passes, now basically anything you put in front of me, I'm like, let me see, D, C, G. Okay, yeah, I got it. And then I play it. And I love playing music. And then I started playing piano, and I've been singing the whole time. And so I've been playing guitar for 37, almost 38 years. And I've been playing piano 15 years and singing, for a very long time, 35 years or something. And so now I've got 3 CDs, and, they're on all the streaming platforms, Angels Unaware. But yeah, I love it. And then I had a music venue too. But so we go back to starting the business. So I was doing concerts. Somebody borrowed my jacket, and I was poor. I mean, I was dirt poor when I was young. Like, apparently when I was 3 years old, I was in a cardboard box in the floorboard of my mom's car with my little brother and sister. And
Wow.
I looked up at her and I said, this being poor thing might be cool for you, but when I grow up, I'm going to be rich. I didn't remember saying that, but in my 20s, she told me that. I'm like, huh, yeah, I could see that. Because I didn't like it was always, begging and relying on other people's mercy and scraping by, and everything was a crisis. And like, I don't know if we can afford to get whatever it was. And I just don't like living like that, and it was constantly chaos. We were moving all the time, and I couldn't tell which space was my space and which wasn't. And I wanted my stuff to be safe, and it wasn't. And like my little brother and sister lived in the same room as me, and they were younger, and they messed everything up all the time. I'm like, but I want my stuff to be good, and it wasn't. So anyway, I was poor, and somebody borrowed my jacket, but it was my only jacket, and they just kind of forgot. So I called them up. They're like, oh yeah, no, I gave it to the bass player. I'm like, okay. So I called the bass player. He goes, oh, I gave it to the drummer. I'm like, I'm very cold. So the drummer's like, I gave it to the guitar player. I'm like, all right. So I called the guitar player. He goes, yeah, I've got it. I'm like, okay, cool. Where do you live? And I thought it was gonna be like an hour away, and it was around the corner. Like I could have walked there. And so I come around the corner in my car, and I said, I'd met his dad before, and I looked up at his roof, and I was like, you don't need a new roof, do you? Because I just got laid off. And he goes, no, but I need tile laid. I was like, oh, I don't lay tile. He goes, you seem like a smart guy. I'll tell you what, there's a free class at Home Depot. If you take the class, I'll give you $10 an hour. Plus I'll buy tools and materials, but I get to keep the tools. He goes, what do you think? I'm like, as long as you know I've never laid tile before, sure. And I took the class for 15 minutes. I was like, that's easy. And I laid the floor, and he goes, maybe after this you'll get a real, or it'll be a business for you. And I was like, maybe after this I'll get a real job. And I did the job, and he loved it. And before I could go get a real job, he said, hey, my neighbor across the street needs their house painted. Same deal for them. I was like, sure, whatever. And so he goes, maybe this will be a business for you. And I'm like, maybe after this I'll get a real job. Well, then he goes, hey, my other friend needs some siding done. Can you take a look? If he'd have said, can you do it? I'd have said no. But he said, can you take a look? I'm like, I'll take a look. And I took a look, and I was like, yeah, I can do that. And he goes, okay, cool. Same deal. I said, yeah. He goes, maybe this will be a business for you. I'm like, maybe after this I'll get a real job. But then I just kept getting more and more jobs. And after a while, I was like, I can't keep asking people to buy me a skill saw every time and a tape measure. Like, I need to buy my own. But if I buy my own, then I have to charge more. I can't just be charging $10 an hour, because buying all these tools costs money. And so I went up to $12 an hour, and then 15, and then 20, and 25, and 50, and 100. And after a while, I was like, I'm a dropout. Like, I can't be charging more than $100 an hour. People aren't going to pay that much money. Like, I'm a kid. I mean, I was charging $100 an hour. I'm trying to think. I think it was my first year in my 30s. So third year, my fourth year. I was probably 25 years old, making $100 an hour. Right.
Dang, that's good
And
money.
it doesn't suck. Right. And, I was like, I'm a dropout, and I'm 25, and I got long hair. Like, it's going to be real hard for me to ask for more than that an hour. So I just started bidding jobs, because that's a normal thing to do. And they went, oh, that's a good price. And so every year I'd time and a half my prices because I was like, I'm so tired, I just need a break. So if I charge more, I'll get less work. And what happened was I charged more and they took me more seriously. And they're like, oh, he must be good. And I'd be like, no, I just want a break. And I hope that you wouldn't pay it. But then they did. And then I keep charging more. I keep getting more work.
And did you have to hire people then?
Yeah. So I had 8 people working for me.
Really?
Yeah, for a long time. And then finally in 2000, for whatever reason, I started asking people, if you knew that you were going to die tomorrow, for sure, like no question about it, there's nothing you can do to stop it. You know, you're just, you're going to die. Don't fight it. What would you do? What would you do with your last day on earth? And the real reason I wanted to know is because I thought I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. And then I'm going to be able to retire and live off the interest. And I just want to like enjoy life because all I've done is worked real hard. And I left home early and, you know, like whatever. But I got really lame answers. And so I'm like, well, let's put some pressure on you because I wanted to know like, hey, is there a cool waterfall in Thailand that I've been missing out on because I've been working too hard to even notice that it was there? But nobody cared. Everybody gave me answers like this. I would party real hard, screw a bunch of people, and take out a bunch of loans for money I'd never pay back. I'm like,
wow.
That's what you
that before. Yeah.
You've heard that's a common thing, right? And I'm like, that's what you would do if you knew you're going to die. I'm like, what if you had a week to live? Same answers. What if you had a year? Same answers. I'm like, what if you had 5 years? Like, what do you believe in enough that you would live for it and die for it? Like, what do you want your legacy to be? You're probably only going to be remembered for 2 or 3 things in your whole life. What do you want that to be? You know, like, what do you think matters enough that you could do that? And I got really lame answers, like really, really bad answers. And so finally I was like, well, what are your answers? You know, what do you think?
Right.
Like, good questions. And I was like, what do I want to do with my life? I never even wanted to do construction. I did it because I had long hair. And then I started making good money. And I was like, you know, it's harder to get out when you're making a lot of money. But I was like, I wanted to be a pastor. And I was like, but what do I want to do? And I thought my body's, and I was 27 at the time. And I was like, I feel like my body's wearing out. Like I can't keep doing this forever because I already had a bad back and I'd already been hurt a lot, you know, all the things that construction does to you. I was like, I don't want to do service industry. I don't want to do food. I don't want to do retail. I don't want to do office. I don't want to be, you know, strapped to a chair or be a yes man or whatever. I'm like, what do I want to do? Like if money was no object and if I had all the time in the world, what would I do with my time then? And also like, what matters enough for me to give my life for this, right? Because that's what when you work, you trade your life for that.
Right. Yep.
Just so that you have money to live. And I'm like, but I want it to count. I want the work that I'm doing to count. And I want, you know, I want the time that I spend at work to make enough money to count. And I want to be able to provide for my kids and, you know, all the things. And I thought I'm past my prime to be a rock star because I wanted to be a rock star. Right.
Man, but they say never give up your dream, right?
I know. And I haven't. I don't live under the same impression that a 20-year-old lives under. Like, oh man, I'm going to go out there and like make $1 million a night. Like, probably not. I'm going to go out there and make $35 a night and be grateful for it.
And in the music industry, enough to know that, like, hey, the guy came in, they saw us. Well, what's the guy? I don't know who the guy was, but he said we were going to be rock stars. And
no, it's nonsense. Yeah, it's all nonsense. The whole entertainment business is just a bunch of people lying to each other all the time.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir there.
Right. I've been in it for a long time. Yeah. So I was like, I don't think I can be a rock star. But I was like, and I would never get any credit for this, but I could be the person that influences people that influence people. I could do that. I was like, if I had a place where we had a big stage with lots of lights and a big PA and we treated everybody like rock stars, and we had a recording studio and rehearsal rooms, then they could rehearse, They could record, they could play, we could make t-shirts, we could do graphics, we could do websites, and we could help people to, like, be better.
Right.
And hopefully by them being around me, they would be like, I want to be nice to people, and I want to be right with God, and I don't want to do the bad things. I want to take my, you know, we all have a power to influence others, and I want
Hmm.
to use that for good and not for evil, right? And so maybe I could make some kind of a difference in these people's lives, that then they would go and influence other people. And even though I would never get credit for it, except for with God, it would be actually more impactful. Like a bigger amount of people would get influenced,
Right.
even though I wouldn't get credit. And so I took all my money and I bought a building and I made a music venue. And
Hmm.
yeah. And
And
so,
that's something I always wanted to do, believe it or not. I wanted to build this big old place and have, all kinds of bands coming in and doing, the classics and
right.
everything. I wanted all that, but yeah, never
It's a
happened.
hassle. Let me just tell you, it's a hassle. So I had that. I bought the building in 2000. And at the time, I had six figures in the bank. I had no debt. Um, I was making $15,000 a week. Like I was doing well.
Hmm.
And I was making $500,000 a year. So, that's not bad money. And I was 27. And then I went $675,000 in debt. Uh, yeah, because after I bought the building, then the city comes in and says, "Oh, you have to do all these renovations and blah blah blah," and it ended up costing me, $100,000 more just for fire code and ADA accessibility.
Don't you just love those guys?
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't love that. I mean, because then I had a stage that was 4 feet tall. I had to put a 54-foot long ramp coming off of it. They just, one thing after another. Then I had a neighbor that complained. He called the cops on me 300 times a month for 4 straight years.
Oh,
300 times. It was 304 times a month on average for 4 straight years. That's 10
for
times
what?
a day for unreasonable noise. 10 times a day for 4 years. It was exhausting, right? So the cops would keep coming out and they just write me tickets. Even if I wasn't there, even if we were closed, they'd still write me tickets. I'm like, how can you write me a ticket for being too loud when I'm not even there or open, when the door is locked?
Hmm.
And they were just like, you have to pay the ticket. So then I had to fight the tickets, right? And that was the hassle. My realtor said, look, they're trying to shut you down. Because at first I'm like, I'll just pay the ticket. What is $100? And she goes, you can't pay the ticket, because if you do, then they're going to set a precedent, and then they're going to build a case against you that you're a nuisance to the city, and they're going to shut you down. And so I had to fight it. And they lied a lot, and the cops lied a lot. And then they had a city. I got interviewed by all the newspapers and radio stations and all the things, because I was a big deal, right? So I was the biggest thing in Arlington, and everybody knew about me. And so they had a city council meeting about me, but I didn't know. And some Fort Worth Weekly came and interviewed me, and I said, what's the angle of the story? And they said, the city council meeting tonight. I'm like, which one is that? And they're like, well, you're on the docket. So Arlington is the biggest city in the country that doesn't have any public transportation. And on their docket that night, it said whether or not to have public transportation and Dream World Music Complex. And I'm like, wow, that's right
Well,
up there on
that's
the
pretty
list.
big.
I'm
What'd you do?
second.
Took a bunch of people off, didn't you?
The one guy that complained lived 1.4 miles away, and he was the head of human resources that had retired. And
Really?
so, yeah, he knew everybody there, and he knew how to complain, and so he did. And so I showed up, and this cop got up there on the stand and said, the manager of Dream World refuses to cooperate with us. And I'm like, from the audience, I was like, that's not true. I'm like, I'm the owner, and I have tried to cooperate with you guys every time. Like I've pulled out decibel readers, we've done tests, we've gone out there to where his house is at the point of reference, and you can't hear anything. He's just complaining. And they're like, you can't talk out of turn, and they shut it down. But then they did say, they quoted stuff from my website. that said we had a state-of-the-art sound system, which doesn't mean anything. Anybody can say
Mhm.
they have a state. I mean, it was like 40,000 watts or something, but even still, it's a mile away, and he was 200 feet away from the railroad tracks. I'm like, bro, you know, there's a train, there's planes, there's cars. This street that you live near has 177,000 cars a day that drive by it, and you want to complain about my music, 2 or 3 nights a week for a couple of hours? Like, calm down. But because I knew they were looking at my website, I wrote this thing on my website that says, does this thing write to you? And I wrote all the details of what was going on, and from my point of view, and every club in the country sent links to my website. Hundreds of thousands of people saw it.
Wow.
And they're like, yeah, that's what they're doing to us too. And apparently that was a very common practice, to just pester people until they went out of business, which still is to this day. And so eventually, when that happened, then they said, what else are you going to write? And I'm like, I'm not going to write anything. I'm trying to keep my business alive. And
Mhm.
they're like, we want to hear what you have to say. I'm like, I don't have anything to say. They're like, sure you do. So I started writing some more stuff, and I wrote my first book, A Wretch Like Me. And then I ended up writing for some newspapers and for some like fanzines and things like that, and reviews on bands and stuff like that. And then eventually I started doing, then I found out my wife was cheating on me, and she left me. And so then I started making movies. Like in 2001, 2002, I started making movies. And real quick, I was like, I'd rather make movies than do music. And
Mm.
so I sold my venue and was doing lots of video stuff. And then I got my venue back because I had owner finance part of it. And then 9 months later, I sold it again. And then I had owner finance part of that. And they went bankrupt 3 times in 6 years, made a few payments, and then owed me 6 figures and went bankrupt and folded. But then I lost, a lot of money.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. So, but now that being said, I got a lot of great relationships. I got a lot of great stories. I learned a lot. Um, would I want to do it again? Probably not. But now that it's already in the past, I could, I learned a lot from all that.
Mhm.
And I think that
Wow.
a lot of people are
This
thankful.
sounds like to me like you just had this like I know that these cities are like that.
Mm.
They're crooks. They
Oh yeah.
just want, if you don't, if you talk back to them the first time, they're kind of right on you. I mean, I had the same
Yeah.
problem right in the town I live in. They have the township and then they have the city.
Yeah.
Township are a bunch of buttholes is the way
Yeah.
I see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Um, so yeah, I did that. And then I started touring the world doing video stuff. And I
mhm.
did that for a very long time. And I've been flipping houses since 93, 94, something like that. I've been flipping
Mhm.
houses. So 30 years, 30 years, yikes. I've been flipping houses. And then, and building and stuff. So basically anything that came along, people would say, can you do this? I'm like, I'll give it a shot. And then next thing you know, I'm doing, big commercial buildings or 20,000 square feet and, all kinds of stuff. And so I built a lot of cool things, and I ended up doing corporate video and, rock and roll, like all over the world for a very long time. And finally I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. Like, I don't need the money. I'm tired of getting yelled at by clowns that don't know what they're talking about. But yeah, I was doing BlizzCon. It was like, I forget, like a $38 million production. It sold out in 10 minutes. It was like ridiculous. And this
Wow.
guy's yelling at me on comm for 17 straight hours. I'm like, you didn't give me the graphics, so I can't put the graphics on the screen. When you give me the
Oh
graphics,
wow.
I'll put the graphics on the screen. Do you have the graphics yet? I'm like, as soon as I get them, I'll tell you. Well, why
That
don't you
sounds
have them?
familiar.
Yeah,
Sounds
it's
familiar. When you're doing websites,
yeah,
you ask the people for images and
yep,
they go, "Well, how come our website ain't getting done?" I go, "Well, I asked you about a month ago for these
yep,
images." "Oh,
yep,
we'll get them right to you."
yeah. It's torture though. So it was a big deal, and we were operating, I forget how many screens, millions of pixels a second. It was
Mhm.
ridiculous. Um, and I was on comm, and I just went, wait a minute. I don't have to take this from you. I don't need this. I never even wanted to do this. And so I looked at my calendar and went, I'm doing these next 3 shows and then I'm done. I'm going to quit.
Mm.
And everybody goes, we'll see you on the next show. I'm like, no, you won't. You'll see me on the next 3 and I'm out. And I did. I mean, it was freelance, but still, like, I just told everybody I'm out of the business and they were like, no, you're not. And then when they'd call, I'd be like, no, I'm out of the business. They're like, oh, he's serious. And so I quit. And then I started doing construction again and doing more flipping and building houses and stuff, really to help people out because I didn't really need the money, but some friends of mine were like, hey, I need some work. And some other people were like, hey, can you do this job? I'm like, what else am I doing? So I did. And then I got pretty well established doing that again. And then COVID happened. And I was an essential worker. I was like, I'm not going to sit at home and get, like be depressed. I'd rather die than sit here by myself alone. And so
that COVID bit a lot of people.
yeah. And so I kept working. And then during that time, maybe it was right before COVID. It might have been during COVID. Everybody was sitting at home, right? And then they said, we love your before and after pictures on your projects. Can you make some videos? I'm like, who wants to watch me work? Like, who wants to sit around? Like, I don't want to watch some cashier doing their job or whatever.
You'd be surprised. Yeah. No, of course, now you wouldn't be surprised, but back then you'd be surprised.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was surprised.
Anything. Yeah.
I was surprised. And so I made videos and they were like, make more videos. I'm like, all right, fine. So then I would kind of walk people through, like, here's the beginning of a project and here's how you do it. And, you guys are bored anyway. So let me just tell you what's going on. And
I just watched one today about you doing electrical.
Oh yeah. I do a lot of that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I mean, I do love it. I love taking something ugly and making it into something beautiful. I love, taking a patch of dirt in somebody's dreams and then just going, let's draw this out. And then I make it. And then they're like, you did it. I'm like, I know, we did it. And that makes me happy. And so people go, you're giving away all your secrets. I'm like, there's plenty of work to go around, man. Like there's plenty of food on the table for everybody. Why in the world am I going to keep all that for myself? I couldn't even do it all if I wanted to, right? Like, let me share this information with you. So I've taken decades to learn it, and let me just dumb it down for you so that it's easy. And before that, for a couple of years, I never told anybody, but I was like, I wish I had some platform where I could tell people maybe like a 3 to 5 minute sermon, just something real quick, because a 30-minute sermon, people are like nodding off and they're looking at their phones and they're distracted or whatever. But 3 to 5 minutes, like, you can keep their attention. But I didn't have a good platform for that. So when they started asking me about, hey, can you do this, film your work, I was like, I'll film my work, but I'm going to tell dumb jokes. And also I'm going to tell you about Jesus, because I'm basically a big human arrow pointing up. And so, so I did, and then people liked it. And then after a while they go, can you put all these together into one piece? I'm like, yeah, sure. So however long it was, I'd just be like, this is when we started doing this porch cover, and this is when we ended doing the porch cover, and this is in between, and it's 12 minutes or 17 minutes or 22 minutes or whatever. Well, then a TV channel, we got in touch with each other, and they said, well, we like your stuff, but it's got to be 28 and a half minutes long. I'm like, I edit. Give me a minute. So, I was like, here you go. And I gave them, I forget, 70 or 80 episodes within a week. Like, here you go.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I already had it. So it was just a matter of putting it together and, whatever. Right. And they were like, oh, you're for real. I'm like, yeah, I am for real. So now I've got whatever is 110 or something episodes. And the owner of Abundant TV called me up 4 or 5 months ago and said, hey, we've been open, our channel's been up for 6 weeks, and we finally got back some ratings or whatever in the world. I was like, oh, cool. And they said, well, you're the #1 show on the channel. I was like, thank you. And you get 9,000 views a day. I was like, oh, that's a lot. And then they called me up last month. They said, hey, we got some more ratings back. I'm like, cool. I said, you're the #1 show on the channel. I'm like, oh, thank you. And so you get 92,000 views a day. I'm like, whoa. Is that a real number? Like, did that many people really watch? And then, like my TikTok, I think we're like, let me see. I made a couple videos recently. One of them's at 380,000 and one of them's at 195,000. Um,
That's incredible.
and I'm constantly literally every time I look at my phone, it's like hundreds of notifications every single time. Like I can look at my phone now, check them, and then walk out of the room, come back in, and hundreds of notifications. And I feel bad because I'm like, I want to respond to everybody, but you can't, right? It's just too many. It's like hundreds of thousands. And I'm working all the time. And then, I'm acting and stuff and I'm playing every night. I'm not playing tonight, but I could have, but I'm playing tomorrow night and I'm playing Wednesday night. And I played Sunday night and I acted Sunday and I preached Sunday morning and I played twice on Saturday and I played Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, Sunday, all last week, plus remodeled a house, a lot of things there. And then made videos for somebody else and then other things. So
Right.
I feel like, man, I want to respond to every last person, but it's difficult to find the time.
Yeah, it sounds tough. I mean, your journey has been quite interesting.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I mean, you get out there, you preach the word to people, and
Mhm.
in the same time, you're showing them how to fix things. Um, I work for a HVAC company right now,
Oh,
and
cool. Do you love it?
yeah, I was a technician for 5 years,
Mhm.
and um, I twisted my knee, blew my knee out, and
Ugh.
then they put me in the office, and I've
Yeah.
been in the office ever since. By grace of God, they were there when I got COVID,
Right.
and the owner paid for all my insurance out of his own pocket. And
Wow.
I mean, my insurance, my total bill was like 1,800,000 and something $1,000 for a
That's a
hundred.
lot of money, man.
I know, but I didn't pay a dime, not a
Wow.
dime. I mean, he took care of me, and they still continue to take care of me. But at the same time, I know that things have to change,
Sure. Yeah.
and there's only so much that he can do. And he gave me a job. He let me come back. Spending that long in the hospital, my recovery, no company had to do that. They didn't have to
Right.
take care of me in any way like that. So
That's a blessing.
it is. And I asked someone, I go, like, I was so close to dying. And everybody says, well, what's it like to be in a coma? And I said, kind of like your deal where I didn't see myself,
Right.
and I was somewhere else.
Yeah.
And whether it be, my feeling is that I got to see the other side, what
Oh yeah.
it could be like. And it changed my life. It changed me. I was, like I said, I was before then, before I got sick, I got saved many years ago.
Right.
Had a real good relationship with God. I lost a daughter. And when I lost my daughter, I was very bitter towards God then, and I lashed out at him. But it sounds like your journey has been a lot of ups and downs, but it seems like it's been on it, you know, all the work you're doing, obviously you're doing it for grace of God. I mean,
Yeah.
prayers and everything like that.
Yeah.
So when you go preaching to people, when you preach, how many people, when you look out there and you see people who you see was just like you, I mean,
Mhm.
do you minister to, runaways and stuff like that? Or
Basically, here's how I see it. Okay. So first of all, I travel a lot too. So
Mhm.
I went to Israel and our tour guide had told us early in the tour that he had been a journalist and a
Right.
teacher, some other things, right?
Mhm.
And as people are in the habit of doing, and I hate the fact that people do this, but I've been in the business forever. And so, people kind of go, oh yeah, well, like what kind of stuff have you done? Would I know any of your work? And you're like, it's perfectly normal to be like a working person that's not a household name, like
Right. Right.
calm
That's
down.
true.
And you can still make your living and still go on about your business and not be known by everybody in the world. In
Mhm.
fact, only a handful of people are known by everybody. That's why they're stars. Anyway, so they they go, um, so like, what are you? Like, are you a journalist? Or are you like a tour guide? Or are you like a, professor? Like, what are you? And he said, it is my calling in life to preach the gospel and to tell the story of the Jewish people in the hopes that some might get saved.
And there you go.
Yeah. And they go, yeah, but like, what kind of stuff have you done? Like, what's your, are you a journalist or whatever? He goes, no matter what I do, it is my calling in life to tell the story of Jesus and to tell the story of the Jewish people in the hopes that
Mhm.
somebody gets saved. And they go, wow, you're pretty passionate about this. He goes, it is my calling in life to tell the story of
Right, right,
Jesus.
right.
He was like single-minded, right? And I look at it that way too, so that, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for that guy. Like, he is my top 5 favorite people in the world, for real. I was just like, man, you get it. Nevertheless, whatever in the world I do, if I'm doing video work, if I'm doing, construction work, if I'm singing, if I'm acting, whatever it is, I'm like, this is an excuse for me to interact with these people.
Hmm.
I can be rich and sit at home and do nothing. I can not talk to anybody, and that's a worthless life, right?
Mm.
But instead, I'm like, I need excuses to go and hang out with people. And usually work is it. You're going to spend more time working than doing anything else. And so to me, I don't look at work as like, this is a bad thing. To me, I look at it like I think God looks down at the world and he goes, these people are praying and I want to answer their prayers. Okay. How can I do it? Like, who are the people that will obey me? And he looks down and goes, well, John will. I'll send him. And some angel's like, but do you have to explain it to him? He goes, no, he doesn't care. He just does not care. You just tell him go and he just walks in that direction. You put a person in
Right,
front of him,
right.
he's going to love him. He does not care. And I don't. Like, I don't care if you're rich or poor, if you're homeless, or if you're, CEO, whatever it is. I look at that like, God could have sent anybody in the world, but he sent me to you and you to me.
Hmm.
And somebody is praying for you. Your mom, your dad, your friend, your kids, somebody is praying for you.
Hmm.
And God sent me. And so I want to be the answer to that prayer.
And there you go. That's exactly it right there.
Right.
I agree 100%.
Right.
I mean, God puts us on a path, but you know, for the longest time, I never understood. Like, you go to church, I'm at church, I'm saved. What am I supposed to hear? What's the pastor actually saying to me?
Right.
I could never understand it until you start really following God. Then you start hearing God.
Yep.
That's my opinion. Yeah, I
Yep.
might be wrong, but it's remarkable. Just like me finding you.
Yeah.
I was praying and praying. Hey, I need to find this one person who I can, latch on to and do an interview with to get everything back on track the way it used to be.
Yeah.
And he's in charge. He's driving the boat.
Yeah. There's
You
no doubt. There's no doubt.
Mhm.
And the
So
thing is, I think that people are hungry for
mhm,
truth. They're hungry for God, and they want something to be real. And they look around at, this is my opinion. Okay. I think I've noticed that people watch a Christian,
mhm,
they want them to fall, right? They
mhm.
secretly are like, I can't wait till you fall, because when you do fall, and you will, and I've had people say this to my face, right? A lot. When you fall, that proves that you're no better than me. Therefore, I don't have to change.
And I think you're right. And I think people are also like a little bit scared because
Yes.
their conception of what a Christian is to
Yep.
look like.
Hmm.
You know, well, you don't look like a Christian. You're not throwing a Bible at my head. I mean, how could
It's
you
like
possibly be a Christian?
it's right. It's like being undercover. So I think that deeper than that, people are really hoping that you don't fail, because if you don't fail, then that means that what you're saying is true, and maybe there's hope for them.
Right, right.
And so I try to push on through to be like, yes, this is hard, but it's worth it. Right.
Hmm.
And so so when I had Dream World, okay, there was there would be people that came through, and from time to time I'm just like, how is there, and I literally think that, because in Romans 8:28 it says all things work together for the good of those that love him. All
Hmm.
things, even the bad things. And so when something bad is happening, I'm like, I know this is going to be for good. I know that later on I'm going to look back and it's going to be good. Right now it's hard, but I'm going to look for the good in this, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to do that. So I had about 5,000 bands come through my venue. And there comes a point where you're just like, I'm not really paying attention to the band names anymore, right? So they
Mhm.
said this is an original member of Slipknot. He's going to come through. He's passing through your place. He'll do the show for $200. I'm like, $200 for somebody from Slipknot? Yeah, sure, whatever. And so I booked it, and they sent me the information. I signed the contract. I put down a deposit, and I copied and pasted the band name in there and put it on my website and went on with my day. And then somebody said, have you looked at this band? I'm like, nope. And they're like, you might want to. And so I clicked the link on my own website. I was like, oh, yikes. That is not good.
Like
uh,
water.
like worse, they were called Anal Blast.
Oh my
Um,
God.
right.
Mm.
And so but by that point, I was like, I'm going to take the link down, but I've already, like, I'm a man of my word. And so I've already signed a contract, so they're going to play.
Mhm.
We had a bunch of bands. It started off like, we're going to only have Christian bands and positive bands and things like that. And the Christian industry turned their back on me. And I was like, I have to pay my bills. And, the people working for me were like, man, Cannibal Corpse is coming through. I'm like, I don't have Cannibal Corpse. They go, why not? You can preach those people. I'm like, all right. So we had Cannibal Corpse and Cradle of Filth and all these bands. And so it would be hypocritical of me to be like, I can't have Anal Blast. And so they showed up. I was at church. It was on a Sunday. Load-in time was 6:30. 12 o'clock, my brother calls me up and says, hey, man, the band's here. They broke into a bar down the street. And then they said, hey, we're here to play at Dream World. And the cops already hated me. And so I was like, I'll be right there. So I pull up, and the backstage door is wide open, and they're rolling joints on the backstage table. And I'm like, hey, you may not know this, but that's illegal. So you can't do that here. And they go, oh, we thought it was cool. I'm like, well, it's not. So I went to my office. I come back out, and I'm bored. So I walk back in the venue, and they've got a merch table set up. And I'm like, it looks like the devil drew that picture. I've been to hell, and that's what it looks like. Oh, that's hardcore, full penetration pornography. I'm like, absolutely not. Right. So I went and found the singer. I was like, hey, we're an all ages venue. You can't have this here, whatever. And he goes, oh, and I won't tell you what he said, but it was highly offensive. Okay. Um, and I was like, okay, but maybe just not tonight. Okay. So then I'm back at the sound booth, and he comes back there and pops open a beer. And I'm like, we're all ages, and so you can't have alcohol here. And we don't serve alcohol, and we can't have it. And he goes, well, I already know that we can't smoke weed here. We can't have porn here. We can't have alcohol. Is there anything else I should know before, the show? And I was like, no, just like play your music and we'll pay you and have a good night. Go on down the road. And he goes, can I F a girl with a microphone? I'm like, please don't. He goes, can I pee on the crowd? I'm like, why would you want to do that? Right. But he kept on
Dang.
listing like highly vulgar, disturbing things. I'm like, yeah, maybe not tonight. You can do that everywhere else except for here tonight. There's one time, just don't. And so usually I worked the door. So that meant that I was outside the building, taking people's money, stamping their hands, and talking to them. Right. That was
Mhm.
my job. And my brother ran sound inside. And that night it was cold and rainy. And so I had to step inside, and I had to witness what they were saying. And I was like, not only am I letting them play on my stage, but I am paying them to play on my stage. I'm like, And some of the stuff they said, I was like, if I was God, I'd strike you dead right now. Like right now, I would hesitate not 1 second. And I was like, could I just throw their stuff out the door and then just lock the doors behind me? And I was like, no, I'm gonna have a riot, because I'd had riots before. I was like, they're gonna tear my building down or burn, whatever. I was like, it's better just to let them finish. So I'm sitting there tolerating it. I'm like, yeah, if I was God, I'd just kill you right now. And I was like, but Jesus loves you so much that you're the only person on earth that had died for you. And I'm like, I wouldn't, just for the record, I wouldn't have done it. Right. You're not nice. I don't like anything coming out of your mouth. And I mean, I'm a bad person, and you make me look good. So they finally get done. They're taking forever to load out. Right. And the singer comes up to me again, pops up in a beer, and I'm just like, I don't even care. I don't care anymore. Like, if the crowd's gone, the cops already hate me. What else are you gonna do? Like, go ahead and drink your beer.
Right.
And he looks at me and goes, I know who you are. I'm like, yeah, I know who you are too. He goes, no, they're talking about you all over the world. He goes, there's a church of Satan that's praying for your demise. I'm like, that's not very nice. And several people told me that. And he goes, I know you're a Christian. I'm like, I am. And he goes, and I've been trying to push your buttons all day long. And I'm like, well, it's been working. you know? And he
You
goes,
just ain't showing it, right?
I guess I didn't show it. And
Mhm.
he goes, but you won't break. And he said, I have been in this business my entire life. I grew up in bars. And this whole thing is built on selling alcohol, selling drugs and sex and cigarettes. And he goes, you've busted your butt to make a place where it's cool for people not to do that. I just want to shake your hand. And I'm like, you want to what? And so I shook his hand. And then he's like, do you play music? I was like, yeah. He goes, what kind? I was like, you'd hate it. He goes, what is it? I'm like, Christian acoustic music. And he goes, man, I love acoustic music. You have a CD? I'm like, yeah, I got a couple CDs. And so he goes, you mind if I have a copy? I'm like, I'll go get them right now. So I gave him the copies. He goes, what else you do? I was like, I write movies and stuff, write books. He goes, really? And I told him, Desperation, the one I was telling you about. He goes, man, I would love to read that. And I'm thinking, you can read? That wasn't nice, right? He's actually an intelligent guy, but I was like, yeah, sure. And I went and printed off a copy and I gave it to him. He goes, man, thank you so much. It was an honor meeting you. And then they left. And I don't know for sure because I never really looked into it, but I heard that a few months later he died.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I don't know what the state of his soul was, and I'm certainly nobody's judge. But from what I saw, he probably was not around a lot of Christians. And maybe that made a difference. I don't know. Right.
Do you feel like it made a difference? At least you got there.
I think that it is our job to plant seeds, and it's our job to love people, and it's not our job to judge people. And so, every opportunity that comes my way, I'm like, I did everything I could for the amount of time that we were given.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I could have done more. Right now, did we become best friends and pen pals? No, we didn't. And it was really before, cell phones were kind of a thing,
right.
all that stuff. But I put things in his hand that told him the gospel, and I tried to live the gospel around him. And at the end of the day, people make their own decision. Right.
That's true. I have a friend of mine who went to high school with. He was like one of my best friends, and I got married when I got married with my first wife. We lost touch, and 30 years later, I was hunting him down. I tried to look for him because you got your best friend from high school. You
Right.
try to find out what happened to him.
Yeah.
I mean, he went to prison, and he was very to this day he's still sour. But I hunted him down, and first time I was talking to him, he asked me, he goes, so what are you doing? I go, well, I'm just doing my thing. I mean, I'm working and, I go to church. He goes, oh man, he goes, you're one of those guys. And I said, oh, what are you talking about?
Right.
I go, I'm still the same person. And it's been like 4 years now.
Yeah.
And he said to me just the other day, he says, you know what? He goes, I can't believe how humble you are. He goes, I cuss, I swear, I drink around you, and it just doesn't phase you a bit.
Right.
And I keep saying, I go, well, if you ever need to talk, I'm here.
Yep.
And he, this last night, he was talking about, he goes, you're bringing me closer to that God. I know you are. And I said, well, I go, anytime you want to talk, I'm here.
Yep.
So I don't know, like you said, if you can save one soul.
If it took my entire life, if it took 100 years and one person got saved, I'd been like, thank you.
Yes.
I'd much rather it was 10,000 or 100,000, but if it was one, it'd be worth it.
Oh, right, right. And I agree with you. I mean, your journey has been exciting. I'm sitting here and like going, wow, it's just that one TikTok video,
Mm.
that one TikTok. You want to share that one? You want to say what you said to the world about
Which one was it? Sorry,
when you, oh, I'm sorry, when
I got about a
using,
thousand of them.
I know, but it was just this one, using the Lord's name
Oh, the
in
Lord's
vain.
name in vain, right? Yeah. So what I said on that was basically that the third commandment, which I think most of us probably have forgotten, right? Because
Mhm.
whenever you're like, what are the 10 commandments? You're like, I think something about not killing. But before that, before not killing is, don't use the Lord's name in vain. You'll have no other gods before you. There's several things that are before that, right?
Mhm.
Honor your father and your mother is before do not kill. And you're like, so this is more important than do not kill? Anyway, um, says do not use the name of the Lord your God in vain. And I think a lot of people feel, and rightly so, that we shouldn't cuss and that we shouldn't, use God's name in vain. We shouldn't say
Mhm.
GD. We shouldn't say Jesus Christ. I can't imagine what it'd be like if my children use my name as a curse word everywhere around the world all day long,
Mhm.
like in almost every sentence. And I know people that can't get through a sentence without using several cuss words,
Yeah, me
right?
too. Mhm.
Right. I mean, like night and day, that's all they have is just filth coming out of their mouth.
Mhm.
And that's got to be tough. Like if somebody just used my name, Josh, whatever, all the time as a curse word, I'd be like, well, that's not very nice, especially considering all I've done for you. Right.
Right, right, right.
But I also think that people use God's name in vain in a way where they say, God told me to tell you that you need to do this thing, and imply that if you don't do it, that you're disobeying God. But really, they're just trying to get you to do what they want you to do.
Correct.
And I think that that has been done throughout history to the great detriment of Christianity, right? I think that the Crusades, that we went around and basically said, well, accept Jesus or die. You're like, I don't think that's biblical at all. Like, I don't think
No,
that's the way
me either.
Jesus would have done it at all. And yet they're taking God's name and they wanted to conquer other countries. And so they're like, oh, but we're doing this for God. And you're like, but are you? Or are you
Mhm.
doing that for you because you want power? Right. And then I see, I can't tell you how many stories I've heard about pastors and priests, molesting kids or, just saying like, hey, all these people need to have sex with me or else because God told me to tell you that that's the way it needs to be. And you're like,
Mhm.
you were in dangerous territory, man. Like you go around, you're ruining people's lives and you're ruining the name of God. And when they think of God, they think of you and people like you. That is a serious offense,
Mm,
right?
just what we were talking about earlier, misconception of what Christians really are.
Right. And, then when people say, I don't want to be around Christians because that's what I think Christians are, I'm like, I don't blame you. I don't want to be around people like that either. You know who else didn't? Jesus. Jesus
Right.
said, Jesus said, the only people he ever criticized were hypocrites and Pharisees, which were church people, right?
Mhm.
Of the day. I mean, if you were to equate that to today, that would be today's church people. They go around and he said, you strain at a gnat, but you swallow the camel. You're worried about every little thing. Like, oh, I don't know if you should have your, exactly how long should your hair be, according to Corinthians, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, but you're mean. As soon as somebody leaves the room, you start talking trash about them. Like, that doesn't set a good example. You don't love anybody, right? Like
Right.
I, I don't want to be around you, but I don't blame other people for not wanting to be around you. Like, learn how to be nice. It's not that hard.
Well, that's how people are. I mean, it's just like, okay, take for instance, my church that I go to. Um, when I was trying to find a church that I'd be comfortable with,
Right.
and the church that I came from, women were not allowed to wear pants. Women were to walk, and be, heads bowed down. The man is the head of the house. Whatever
Right.
he says, go. All these things. I'm thinking, God, there's got to be another church out there. Please help me find another
Right.
church. And so I went to this. It's called All Shores, and I was walking up. me and Jody, my wife, we were walking up, and all of a sudden I heard this kick drum,
You're like, oh, hey,
and I
friend.
went, uh, "This is sounding better than when I get up there." And I got inside, I heard it. It was, oh my God, it was just really good. And I'm like, wait a minute, am I in a church? This is
Right.
I'm not used to this. And so we go down. I sit in the back, and there's a reason why I sit in the back. I sit in the back because I can't stand people behind me.
Yeah, yeah.
I just have that.
Sure.
I keep praying every day, God, help me get over this. But apparently it's me that's holding back, So I
Sure.
sat back there, and all of a sudden, I look up there and I see this guy up there shredding the guitar. And I'm just like completely like blown away. And I'm like, this is a church. I mean, if I brought my uh mother-in-law and father-in-law to this church would be burning. This is
Right.
not church. And I'm like, and he preached right out of the Bible, but it was the pastor who was shredding.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is just amazing. I just said, and then ever since then, I've been going to that church. And then, hey, we need you to do this. We need you to do that. Hey, can you run the sound for the churches today? And I'm like, okay, I can do that. I've done that before.
Right.
And so I become more and closer. And the closer I got to God, the more good things started to happen,
Oh, yeah.
And when I start to stray away, it feels like God's going, get back
Oh,
here.
oh, yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you know that feeling, right?
I do. Yeah. And the thing is, we're called to a higher standard.
Mhm,
There's a lot of people. I was talking to somebody about this recently where everybody else in the world is doing this bad thing, right? Like really, really bad thing.
mhm.
And I'm like this, like maybe I could just stray off the path like a little, like see what that feels like over just right here. And then he's like, nope, not you. And I'm like, okay. but
Yeah,
but I'm grateful for it, right? Because like I don't want to be going off the path. And for whatever dumb reason, I think, oh yeah, I'll just go over here for a second. He's like, no, you won't. You're gonna stay on the straight and narrow.
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
People
it,
are watching you and you can't do those things. You can't even do them a little
well,
bit. And I'm like, okay.
that's that's exactly right, because I feel like there's days when I wake up in the morning, I get dressed, I eat my breakfast, and on my way to work, I pray to God the
Yep.
whole 28 minutes. That's mine and God's time, and but there's sometimes it's just like, okay, like for instance, right before the pandemic,
Mm.
um, right before everything started happening, the election and everything, I had a real bad problem. And the problem is there division in the church because of
Right.
the political, everybody's political views.
Right.
And I asked, many of the pastor, the outreach pastor, all these people, that I just asked them the same question, and kept saying, "We would like to think that there isn't." And that's not what I want to hear. I want to
Right.
hear,
What there
it,
is.
yeah.
Right.
And finally, they asked me why I did that and why I'm asking that, and I said, "Well, here's the reason why." I says, a guy walks into a church, just not something like our church. You can wear whatever you want to church. You don't have to wear a suit and tie. You don't have to do
Right.
any of that stuff. And the guy walked into church and he had a Trump shirt on,
Right.
and he walks into the church and they asked him to leave, that he
Really?
wasn't allowed there.
Oh, wow.
So that piqued my question of, why is there division in the church?
Yeah.
And I did a show about that, kind of by myself, and I'm sitting there asking the questions: is there division in the church? And if there is, why are we doing this? This is
Yeah.
not what God wants us to do. Jesus doesn't want us. He doesn't divide us.
Hmm.
Why is that? Why is that? What's the question? And to this day, I never got a real answer to this day.
Well,
I know what the answer is,
right.
John. I know what the answer is, but I want them to tell me what the answer is. There
Yeah.
is division.
The 100% there's division in the church. And it's not just in the church, it's everywhere, right? Like
Mhm.
everywhere we look, they're dividing us, right? I like the red team. Well, I like the blue team. Well, I like Democrats. I like Republicans. Well, I like, this football team or that football team or whatever it is. We're the good guys and you're the bad guys. Like, we want to think that so that it justifies us to, like, but we can talk bad about them. We can hurt them, and we can even kill them and take their stuff because they were the bad guys and we're the good guys. You're like, but that's not true. That's not true at all. And in corporate, I saw this a lot too, right? So I would see, so I did a lot of freelance work for this company that was $4 billion a year company. That's not small. And they had different divisions, but they would fight with each other all the time in front of the clients. They'd say, oh, Expo is horrible. Let me tell you some secrets about Expo. This is how you get a discount on your stuff from Expo, blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like, oh yeah, well, AV is horrible. Let me tell you about them. And then they'd be like, I hate the production manager over here, and I hate the blah, blah, blah over here. And I'm like, you guys realize you're all on the same team, right? Like, do you know that? Do you know that your paychecks come from the same person? And if you get profit sharing and you do well, then you do better. And yet you're so consumed with fighting with each other that you can't be bothered with that. And I'm like, but the church does that. We do. We're better than you because we fill in the blank. We don't have instruments in church, or we do have instruments in church, or we speak in tongues, or you don't speak in tongues, or whatever in the world. And I'm thinking, but it doesn't matter. Like, in the body of Christ, like our body, not everything's an eyeball or a foot, right? Or a heart. But if your heart doesn't work, you're dead. And if some part of your body doesn't work, you're like, you got a splinter, and all your attention focuses on that. You're like, ugh, that's not good. And so I think in the body of Christ, if we were to actually unify and actually go, there's somebody in trouble, let's help them, right? Let's send all our attention to them and help them and heal them. That would be amazing. We'd be unstoppable. Because like, you think about the NRA, right? They have one mission. We want guns, right? No matter what comes up, they send out a thing, everybody go vote. And they're just like, yes to guns. And then they leave. You could disagree on literally everything else. They'd be like, but we want guns. We want guns, and we want all of the guns, and we want all the bullets and all the stuff. We don't care. And everybody goes, yeah, we're part of the NRA. We're guns. Do you read anything else? We don't care. We want guns, right? And if we were that way about Jesus, we'd be unstoppable.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
LGBTQ, same thing. Those people are focused. They are unified in that one thing, right? Everything else they may disagree on, but they are unified on that. And
if they would do that for Jesus,
yes,
and everything, imagine how powerful.
We would be unstoppable. Right?
Right.
We could just get over ourselves and stop bickering about stupid, petty things and start realizing I don't have to agree with anything that you say, believe, or do for me to be kind to you at all. You can do everything I hate, and I can do everything you hate, and we can still be kind to each other. And that is true.
That is a good message. Good message.
Yeah, it's 100% true.
Well, we as the people, have lost our way, and I think a lot of people have lost their way with Christ as well. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who claim to be Christians. I shouldn't say it that way, who are, let's just say, Christians, but I think they hide behind it to try to make themselves look better in the eyes of other people. They go to church, they show up for church, they donate to the church, and they think that is.
And I think that to some degree, if we're being fair, I think to some degree, everybody probably has good intentions. And they probably are living up to the measure of faith that they have at the time, right?
Right.
That from a different perspective looks like we're not good people. And I'm certainly not one to judge. I would be a terrible judge. I would be terrible as God. I'd be like, everybody comes in, right?
Come on, man. We'll figure it out later.
Right. But God's smarter than me, a lot smarter than me. And he knows people's hearts. And here's what I found, right? As a person who doesn't cheat on anybody, I never had to look through my wife's phone or, worry. I just thought, oh, why would she do that? I wouldn't do that. And so in my heart, I'm just like, I think that we don't see the world the way that the world is. We see the world the way that we are. And so for me, like I look at people and go, they've got good intentions. They're just, like a little misled, or they haven't thought it through or something. Maybe they don't have good intentions. I don't know, but I would assume that they do because I do. Um,
Right.
and I think that other people are like, ooh, everybody's got bad intentions. I'm like, maybe you have bad intentions, right? That's why you see that.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, your message is solid. I could talk to you forever. I mean, this is what you need to do. This is what your mission is. Just like we're doing tonight, to have that and get it out there to the people. If what's the best advice that anybody has ever gave you?
Best advice.
Hmm.
I mean, it. I think people a lot of times ask me like, "Who's your hero?" or whatever, right? And I'm
Hmm.
going to be honest with you, I don't have one. I don't have heroes. I got one hero, and that's Jesus. And
There you
he,
go.
he said to love your neighbor as yourself and to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And if you do those two things, you fulfilled the whole law. And it's real easy to get bogged down in like the splitting hairs and whatever. And I'm like, if you will love people, it will consume all your time. For real. There are so many things in life to complain about. You could spend the rest of your life complaining and never get through it all. But do you want to live your life like that? Because there
Mm-mm.
are so many things to be grateful for that you could spend the rest of your life being grateful and never run out of stuff. You could look around and just be like, this is wonderful. And this is a miracle. I'm thankful for this. And this person's wonderful, right? And I think that if we can learn how to adjust our eyes that way and learn how to adjust our heart that way, to just be grateful for the things that we have, the people that are around us, for the blessings that God's given to us, to be kind to people, to love people, to try to understand them. It's easy to go, well, man, they look different or they talk different or whatever. So I don't like that.
Hmm.
But that's kind of ignorant, right? Like it's okay for people to not do the same things that you do and still to love them. It's perfectly fine. And so I
That's
think
true.
that, yeah, I mean, so I travel a lot, right? And when I do, oftentimes people say, like, what's your favorite place? And I'm like, every place has a beauty of its own. Every person has a beauty of their own. Everything has a beauty of its own if you will just look. I was in Africa and I take a lot of pictures, right? And I have done it for a long time for a living. And so I'm fairly good at it. And so I took all these pictures around this orphanage that we were staying at. And the people that had started the orphanage, after a few days, saw the pictures on Facebook and they said, we forgot how beautiful it was where we live. Thank you for sharing those pictures because it reminded us that the place that we live is beautiful. I'm like,
Right.
good.
Picture says everything. That's what I taught my daughter. My daughter's a photographer.
Yeah.
She didn't want to be one, but I kept telling her, no, you have this eye. Now she's capturing all these memories. And what you just said is true. Um, you're capturing those moments and you're preserving the beauty of what we have left in our
Yeah.
world.
And I think that when somebody looks at my pictures, when somebody looks at my videos, I hope that they see the world as a more beautiful place. I hope that when you
Mhm.
see the world through my eyes, that you're like, this is a beautiful place. Like every day, God paints a sunset for us. And every once in a while, we look up and every once in a while, we appreciate it.
Mhm.
But it's there all the time, right? Like you look up and you go, wow, he did that for me. And he did that for me. And he did that for me. And like you could spend the rest of your days and be grateful and thankful and happy every moment. Or you could spend the rest of your days and be miserable and complain and be just a scourge on yourself and everybody you know. But
That's true.
I'd
Yeah.
much rather be the first person.
That's
I'd
why
much rather,
I'm battling. I'm an overthinker. I overthink.
yeah,
I mean, it's bad. It's chronic
yeah,
and it causes a lot of problems. But since there are nights when it's good. I ask God, hey, please let me get a good night's sleep. And I
mm,
sleep really well. But you're right, it can cause problems.
it
But
does.
as long as I keep asking him to help me, it seems to work. I just, there's times it doesn't, but I think we have all been there. We have our issues. Let's just say that, but we
Well,
can get through them.
I think that the world has kind of trained us to worry, right? And to just
Hmm.
not, but God talks about a childlike faith, right? And a child doesn't understand where the food comes from. They don't understand how the rent gets paid or how you get gas in the car, any of those things, right? They just know I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm sleepy, like I want a snack, whatever. And the parents go, oh, my baby's crying, my baby has a need, and they take care of it. And the kid doesn't know. And the kid doesn't necessarily care. Over time, they do. But at first, they're just like, this person takes care of me, this person loves me. And, you know, doing corporate, like we did big shows. We did multi-million-dollar shows all the time. In fact, I didn't hardly do a show that was less than $500,000. And over time, you just kind of get used to it. And no matter what in the world happens in show business, the answer is just throw some money at it and make it work. Like, we're going to have a show. We've never, ever, we just went, oh, well, guess we're not gonna have a show tonight. The crowd out there is just gonna have to go back home, ever. Right? No matter what in the world happened, if I went to the people that employed me and said, hey man, all the projectors went bad, we have to get more projectors, they would find a way and they'd get more projectors, and we'd get them up in the air and we'd focus them and we'd have a show. If it was like, no matter what it costs, no matter what it took, they would make it happen. And there came a point where I realized God does the same thing for me. I don't have to understand. It's bigger numbers than I can imagine. I'm not on that level. But when I come to them and say, hey, there's a problem, and I want us to deal with this before it's too late, then they just go, thank you for telling me. We're going to get right on that. What do you suggest we do? And I tell them, and they'd be like, we're going to go take care of it. And then we'd do it and we'd make it happen. And I give my problems to God in that way. I just go, I know that you own everything, the whole universe. $1 billion is nothing to you. $1 trillion, all the money in the world is nothing to you. Whatever the problem is, how complex it seems to us, he's like, I can fix that easy. That's something like a low-level angel could do in his sleep.
Correct.
Right? Why are you worrying about that? And it doesn't make anything better, right? Like, worrying it won't add a minute to your life. All worrying does is it's like wishing for something bad to happen. And it does, I just leave it in God's hands, and trust me, my plate is full all the time. I'm dealing with literally millions of dollars worth of things right now. And they're a problem, and it 100% lies on me. It's not like there's a team of people. It literally is 100% mine. And I have people that work for me, but they don't think about these problems at night. They go home and the sleep of the laborer is sweet, right? They don't think about it. They come back and they look at me like, why are you so stressed? I'm like, I don't know, because I'm dealing with a lot of things. But
they don't know.
No, you can't. And I'm not upset with them that they don't know. It's just, they're not at that level. And when they are, then they'll understand. Right. But I give everything to God, even at this level, with a childlike faith. I'm just like, I've done everything I can do on my end. I've prayed about it. I've given it to you, but I don't pray and go hide in a hole. I pray and then I go out and face my enemies. And
that's what I do. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
You have to do it that way, because if you don't, hiding doesn't fix it. I mean,
no, because there's something that has to happen in you, right? You have to change too. There's a lesson in there for you. It's not just all like everybody else is wrong and you're right. Like, now that you're on God's side, like, he's trying to refine you and get the yuck out. And we forget about that. We go, oh, I'm saved. That's that. And you're like, yeah, you got some work to do. You still got some stuff. You still got some stuff that could use some work. And so I just learned a long time ago, like, if God says he'll do it, he'll do it. And what's the worst that you're gonna do to me? I'm gonna die? That doesn't scare me. You take everything I got. I've already lost everything I got several times over, right? Like, you're gonna hurt me, you're gonna make fun of me. I've done all that. Like, what are you gonna do to me? I don't care, right? Like, I'm not afraid of you. And I've stood where martyrs were killed. I went to Israel and I went to Turkey and Greece, and we stood where martyrs were killed, and they told us their stories. And I was like, how can I ever complain about anything? I've been to orphanages and prisons in third world countries, and I'm like, how can I ever complain about anything?
that I've been there, done that.
Right.
It, people don't realize how good we really have it.
100%. Like our poorest people are rich over there. And
Yes.
and I'm just like, you got the homeless people with iPhones. I'm like, over there, not so much. They're
Just
opening
done
up.
using coconuts. So, you
Yeah.
know, but so what would you say would be the best advice you could give to somebody who's hanging on the edge of their faith in God?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, if you're hanging on, first of all, hopefully there's somebody in your life that you're like, if you review the tapes, you go, that person was solid. Go and find
Hmm.
that person. Pick up a Bible. Look, every phone has one. Just search it. The amazing thing about the Word of God is that it is the living Word of God. I
Hmm.
can be thinking of whatever, I can have some problem on my heart and randomly open up and be like, what are the odds that that's exactly what I was thinking? Because God is talking to you through that. I can't think of a word and then open up the dictionary and that I land on that word. That's not how it works.
Right.
Right. I couldn't open up a Harry Potter book and be like, I hope this is going to be about I don't know, whatever Harry Potter is. But with the Bible, you can. And so I would say, if you want to talk to God, you pray. If you want God to talk to you, you read the Bible. And
Hmm.
then find somebody that you can talk to, somebody that's got some sense, because a lot of times we get cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs in our heads. We start thinking some things and they're not based on fact. And you need to have a friend that's going to be solid with you and say, hey, man, you're wrong. And I love you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to pray with you, but that's not blue. That's
Right.
red. That over there is
Right.
red,
Right.
and you're in trouble. And and if you don't have a friend, then there are lots of helplines, and there are churches everywhere. That I'm telling you, there are millions of people that want to help you.
Hmm.
And you think I'm 100% alone. You know the story about Elijah, right? So Elijah calls
Hmm.
fire down from heaven, kills 400 prophets of Baal, does amazing miracles, stops it from raining for 3 years, and then he prays, and then it does rain. And all this happens, and then he runs away and goes hides underneath the tree and says, I'm the only one left. You might as well just kill me. The same day. And God's like, take a nap, have a snack. You're not the only one. There's 7,000 people in that city that won't bend their knee to Baal, right?
Hmm.
You're not alone. So know this, you're not alone. And when you think like suicide is the answer, it is 100% not the answer. Because you are not escaping your problems. You're just amplifying your problems. And you're also putting your pain on everybody else that you love. And
That's right.
I don't matter, I don't matter, I don't matter, nobody will care. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Every one of us has a circle of people around us that loves us. Maybe they're not the best at showing it, but if you were gone, it would devastate their lives.
Right.
So find a church that you love. If you find a church that's bad, go to a different one. You're not stuck, right?
Mm-mm.
Find some Christians around you that'll pray with you, that'll help you, and they're everywhere. When I started doing drugs, I noticed that everybody was doing drugs, lawyers and cops and everybody everywhere I went,
Hmm.
restaurant workers and cashiers and you name it, they're all doing drugs. I'm like, drugs are everywhere. But then when I became a Christian, I noticed Christians are everywhere. They're
That's
lawyers,
right. Right.
they're lawyers
Yeah.
and cops and restaurant workers and cashiers and all those things too. What you focus your attention on, you will see. And so if you are looking for good people, you will find good people. You'll find that they're right there in front of you. And the answer that you need is almost always right there in front of you. So American Indians believe that wherever there is a disease or a problem or a bad thing, right, that the antidote is right there next to it all the time, every single time. Okay. So here's an example. I'm highly allergic to poison ivy, right?
Hmm.
But then I learned, and I mean, I get it a lot because I work outside and I try real hard, but I get it a lot. And then I learned that there's a natural remedy for poison ivy, and it's called jewelweed. And jewelweed grows near poison ivy all the time. Like if there's poison ivy growing, chances are there's jewelweed growing right next to it. And so I was working on building a bridge, and I looked down. I was like, "Oh no, I'm in shorts and I'm knee high and poison ivy all around me. And I was like, this is not going to be good for me. And I was like, but wait, there's got to be jewelweed around. And I looked, and sure enough, there was. And I took it and rubbed it all over my legs, and I didn't get poison ivy.
Hmm.
And I think that whenever we think we're at the end of our rope and there's nothing left, that if we will take a moment and if we will pray, God will be like, look to your left. And you look and you go, wow, that's the answer right there. I've heard so many stories about people that were at the end of their rope, and then God was like, here I am and I love you. I'm not going to let that happen to you.
That's true. I was in that place
Yeah.
right after COVID.
Mhm.
Right after COVID, think about it, you come home, you can't hardly walk, you have a walker,
Yep.
um, you can barely, get to the bathroom, you have to be helped get in and out of the shower. And then, when everything is you think is bleak, everything's worse it can get, then your wife walks out on you and just leaves you. And
Yep.
I'm sitting there. And I remember when it happened, I went to a friend's house. The whole day was perfect. And I come home, I opened up the door, and I just kind of looked at my house, and I just fell to my knees and just cried. And I just said, God, I just can't do this. Don't do this. And, I had my cry for a little bit. I sat on the floor. My dogs laid across my legs, and they were right there with me. And I was just like, all right, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. I just don't want to go through this again. I don't want to do this. And he just said, like, go to church, every Sunday, go to church, get a part of the church groups, do this, do that. And when I did, everything went away. The
Oh,
pain,
yeah.
everything. My wife is back now, but it took, I'm following his path. Whatever he wants me to do, I do
That,
without hesitation. You know,
that's the
that's
smartest
why
thing you can
I'm
do.
talking to you.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
It's the smartest thing you can do. If you fight against God, that's a losing battle, right?
hmm
The more you think, I'll show you, he's like, will you?
hmm
Guarantee you I can outweigh, like,
yeah, yeah, he'll do it. Yeah,
yeah, like that's a fool's errand
and
right there.
there might be a little bit of mercy, but not much. I mean, he'll knock you out. I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean,
happened.
he might provide a whale to swallow you up for a couple of days until you learn your
Mm-mm.
lesson, right?
No, we don't want that either. So,
No, it's so much easier just to obey God the first time. And you're like, man, my life is easy. So when I went to rehab, I told you about this. But when I went to rehab, they said, take off your shoes. And I had colorful words to tell them, which equaled no. And they said, do it or else. And I'm like, no. And then they called 6 big guys that lifted weights all day long in, and they each grabbed a limb, and I was holding onto the doorknob, sitting out, like horizontal, and they pulled me off, and they each grabbed, arm, leg, head, and then somebody sat on my head, and somebody sat on my chest, and they strapped me down to a thing. And when they did, they ripped out my earrings. I've still got scars on there. And then I bit my way out of the restraints. And then I beat on the door, and they came back and they tied me back down. And then I was screaming and yelling and whatever. And finally I went to sleep. And the next day they're like, are you cool? I was like, I really have to go to the bathroom. And they're like, are you going to fight us? And I was like, no. And so then they like deliced me, and I had to do a strip search, and I went through all this stuff. And then they finally let me in a general population. And everybody goes, man, what happened to you last night? I was like, I got put in rehab. And they're like, well, your brother did too. And I look over, and he's playing foosball. He just took off his shoes, right? He's like talking to girls. He's watching TV. And the whole time I've been strapped to a bed fighting everybody. And you can do things the hard way, which way I've always done it, or you can do things the easy way. You're gonna end up in the same place, but like, how hard do you want your life to be? It's so much easier just to do the right thing the first time.
it usually is.
Yeah,
So, hey,
100%.
it's been great. I'm glad you did this interview. I really appreciate your
Yeah,
time. Hope
yeah,
we can do it again.
yeah, my
And
pleasure.
and I just really enjoy it. And I'm gonna work real hard to get your stuff out there. And
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just and all it did is took that one TikTok.
Yeah.
to bring me to you. So you gave me a lot tonight. I just want you to know that.
Well, thank you.
So,
There's no accidents in life. There's a bunch of divine appointments. There's things that are too complicated for us to understand, but there are no accidents. And
well,
so God put us together.
all right. Well, hey, thank you for your time, and
Yep.
we'll see you later.
Okay. Sounds good, man.
Yeah.